Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. Jack Draper is Indian Wells champion. He wins his first Masters 1000 title. He surges into the top 10. He beats Holger Rune in the final, 6-2, 6-2, in an emphatic performance, which we will most definitely analyze and discuss on this week's episode of Monday Match Analysis. But I was taught in journalism school to never bury the lead, to always start with the most exciting, urgent, interesting thing. And in this case, it is the opportunity that I got on the back of the 2025 Arizona Tennis Classic after the championship match to speak with the champion, one Joao Fonseca, who wins his third title of the year, his fourth title in the last 4 months, if you count the next gen in Saudi Arabia. Coming through and winning a Challenger 175 that was most definitely as stacked and loaded as you'll normally see an ATP 250. So me and Fonseca, about 7.5 minutes. That'll start the show right now. Joao, congratulations on the incredible week. There's a lot I want to ask you about, but first I want to let you dictate the topic. Looking back on what you did this week, what makes you most proud?
For sure, I mean, this week, this challenger could easily be a top ATP 250. So, I mean, very good players by ranking. I mean, was so good. Players that play really well on hard court. So I'm very proud of the way that I stayed mentally in this final and against Struff also. Doing my serves and focusing a lot on the returns, of course, but didn't get the opportunity in the second set. He was serving well, doing some great volleys, great drop shots, like we all see against Sasha. So, I mean, happy the way that I fought, and then I did a really good tiebreak.
Today reminded me a little bit of the Buenos Aires final because there were some significantly frustrating moments for you, just in terms of getting a lot of opportunities. You know, you served for that championship twice, and you got broken, and then you played a stellar tiebreak. And this second set, you had 7 break points. Bublik hit a lot of aces. Not much you could do on many of them.
Exactly.
But still, it had to be a little bit frustrating. Your composure stands out to me. Were you always like that?
Yeah, of course. Some frustrations. I had two times serving for the set on the first one, and then the second set I had a lot of opportunities to break him. So yeah, I'm very proud the way that I stayed mentally. It's difficult. You stay frustrated every time. You're like, okay, I had the opportunity and now let's go again. So yeah, I stayed in the present. So I'm very proud of myself.
You came off of a second round loss at Indian Wells to a guy who just won the title. I'm sure you've heard. So there's no shame in that whatsoever. But there were probably aspects of your performance when you looked at it that you wanted to do better. You come into a week like this with like specific things that you're looking to correct from the week before, or is it just wipe the slate clean and start fresh?
You're saying about Jack Draper's match and then this week?
Yeah, were there things that happened in that match that you wanted to make sure
I mean,
to
stayed
correct?
More solid during my server games, and well, today was not like this, but when you have the opportunity to try to stay more solid and aggressive at the same time, courage. So I mean, today I didn't get the opportunities, but we are trying to focus on the more solid, play aggressive, but not going for the lines. And yeah, this I think I did pretty well. And against Draper on the second set, first set was a little bit very tight. Both of the sides were nervous, and he got a really good breaker against me. So yeah, it was very close. And the second set, he just broke me in the first or second game, and then he stayed a little bit more going for the shots, going for the net, and I was still a little bit more tight. Couldn't play a little bit my game, but it happens. I think it's experience. And yeah, I'm still living the tour. Is my second year as a pro, so yeah, getting this experience is gonna make me evolve on this sport.
The staying solid part of it, obviously there's this balance because you want to do what makes you special as a player, and part of that is you can attack from the back of the court with your power off of both wings, you want to keep that special sauce, but you also want to make high percentage decisions on the court, right?
Exactly.
So how do you go about working on that?
I mean, my thing is to go aggressive, but at the same time, that's my thing. I like to go. I like to go for the shot. I can accept that I'm gonna miss more than the opponent. It's okay. I'm gonna make more winners maybe, but I'm gonna make more on forced erros also. So I accept that. That's who I've been all of my career, and yeah, just trying to be more solid on the important points. Make a little bit of the guy. Maybe sometimes the guy can miss. So yeah, just I'm trying to understand a little bit more how to play the game on the important points, stay a little bit more solid, go more for the cross courts, and yeah, of course, at the same time, it's a thing of mine. Go for the shot, go for the down the line. Of course, in the breaker, you can see I try some good shots. Try a winner. It's my thing, but at the same time, just try to think a little bit more on those moments.
I thought you were at the net a lot this week. And maybe that's a way of almost being able to go for less because you feel like you can finish up at the net. But it's really impressive to me how well you volley at this stage in your career, because I'm sure when you were younger playing against weaker competition, you didn't necessarily have to come forward, right? You could blast winners, but you still developed your transition game because your volleys are already great.
I think last year when I played the hard courts indoors, it helped me a lot. Me and my coach, we have been working for this transition to go for the net a long time. Every practice we have, we try to work very hard on the transitions, on the volleys. We practice a lot of volleys because the thing that on South America we play a lot of clay, so we don't go very much to the net. And then on hard court, you need to go. If you want to be a top player, you need to go to the net, finish the points, be aggressive. And yeah, we're trying to evolve at the same time. We are working a lot.
Yeah. Pressure and expectation can be toxic for a tennis player. Obviously, it's a product of you having good results, but there must be some strategies, and you seem to handle it incredibly well. There must be some strategies to withstand some of the external noise that just build up some of the expectation that we've seen some players in the past. It affects them negatively. So how do you make sure it doesn't affect you negatively?
I mean, there's a sentence that me and my coach, we talk a lot, like, pressure is a privilege. Yeah. So, I mean, the pressure will come every time. The expectations will come. You just need to stay focused, stay with the people that can help you. And that's what I'm doing, trying to be with people that can help me and help me stay a little bit out of the media at the same time, because the media put a lot of pressure, put a lot of expectations, and stay focused on your world, what you need to do, on your routine, what you need to achieve, what you want. So, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. That's what my team are helping me to do. So, yeah, I'm very happy with the people that I have and what they are helping me achieve.
Yeah, it's great to hear. Incredibly important. And you know, it was a pleasure to call your matches this week. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for the
Thanks
time.
a lot.
Congratulations. Best of luck in Miami.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So that was a great treat to be able to talk to Joao. And I'm so impressed with the way he carries himself. I'm so encouraged by the maturity, the head that he has on his shoulders, how loving and close he is with his team is, and what a great relationship he seems to have with them and his family. And that's the reason why, you know, I had a lot of questions that obviously I wasn't going to be able to ask because I only had a limited amount of time. And I was thinking really kind of long and hard about if I wanted to ask that last question about the pressure and the expectations, because I don't necessarily want to take part in that, certainly not directly to his face, but let me tell you, just from being around, people do take part in that directly to his face. They think they are just complimenting him and not at all doing him a disservice when they shake his hand at the event and say, Joao, you're going to be #1 in 2 years. Like, people just willy-nilly say that stuff to the kid all the time. And I got to say, it's unhelpful. I don't think anybody means badly when they're doing it. I don't think anyone has ill intentions, but I think that is really hard for somebody to constantly be hearing. And that's why I wanted to ask him that question. I do think that he is really well suited to being able to handle this. And the other reason I decided to go ahead and ask the question is because it's going to be one of the most important things in his career for the next 3 years. And he knows that, and his coach knows that. I will add the other thing that I wanted to ask him about and didn't get to is his fitness journey. I wanted to ask him if he had any fitness goals and what he was working on. I did get to talk to his trainer afterwards, Emmanuel Jimenez, and Emmanuel told me that they're happy with his weight. So they're not trying to lose weight or gain weight, but they are trying to shed fat and gain muscle. And they feel like the legs can be a lot stronger, and there's a long way to go, and it is a long process. They've made a lot of progress, so they're proud of the progress they've made physically in the last year, but they feel like they're not even close to being strong enough, particularly in the legs. And, watching him live for, four matches this week, it certainly, you could see that. Like, you could see that he moves well, but he could move a whole lot better. And obviously, that's going to be a part of his development, and that's why he's going to be a better player than what he currently is. Last note is that nobody told him that Draper won Indian Wells. So when I think I said something like, you probably know Jack won the tournament. It had been about an hour and change where, he's doing recovery, ice bath, all the post-match kind of responsibilities that he has, even with the tournament, and nobody told him Jack won. So I just thought that was funny. He was just finding that out from me. All right, can't wait to get into this Indian Wells final, where two guys met who are knocking on the door of the elite ranks of the game, and hopefully soon entering their prime, where they're going to be challenging the very best players in the world. But you got the feeling with both of them, or you get the feeling with both of them. They're not quite there yet. This week was a major stepping stone for both Draper and Rune. Obviously, even more so for Jack, hoisting the trophy at the end of it. It was 6-2, 6-2 in the final. We'll talk about what went down. But first, I want to tell you about my favorite Monday Match Analysis sponsor of all time, Go Sport. I say that they're my favorite for two reasons. One, it is an exceptional tennis product, the best tennis bag I have ever owned when it comes to their organization, based on the customization features, the extreme durability based on the quality of material, and the sleek design that matches all rackets. So if you switch your rackets, you're not going to be caught with a bag that looks kind of weird with whatever racket you play with. I also personally relate to this brand, and that is the second reason. Because when I started Monday Match Analysis, it was all about keeping my focus narrow. I dedicated myself to fixing a problem that I saw in tennis media, which is that nobody was doing in-depth post-match breakdowns. And I didn't have investors, I didn't have corporate backing or a producer, but I trusted the vision I had for my product. And I've gotten to know Chris, the founder of Go Sports, a little bit as well. I can say his story is basically the same. He's part of a family of tennis players. They got frustrated with the tennis bag market and decided to do something about it, to make it better. Go Sport is a family business, and they just focus on tennis bags. So they do it better than the other brands out there that are juggling 70 to 200 products all at once. Use the code GIL10 for 10% off your order. Go to geausport.com, gosport.com, and use the code GIL10. All right, Draper over Rune. Jack's first Masters 1000 title. He breaks into the top 10 and then some, because he's all the way at number 7 now. Tennis Channel had this stat after the match. Since last October, Jack Draper is now second in tour wins, behind Jannik Sinner, who still somehow leads that with 21. What Draper has done here at the start of 2025 is nothing less than terrifying. The fact that he lost his offseason to a hip injury, the fact that he lost weeks following the post-Australian Open after re-aggravating the hip injury, and yet still in 2025, he has a 13-2 record. He's just had the best week of his life. an Australian Open fourth round, a Doha final, and an Indian Wells title. The fact that he's been legitimately compromised at points and has still done this is insane. And his coach, James Trotman, had a chat with Jason Goodall. James Trotman, I think the world of, by the way, Jack Draper's coach. And he said it wasn't until the week before Indian Wells that they actually felt like they were at 100%. So when you're making the Doha final and you're not 100% yet, it speaks to the talent. And it's always been part of the story with Draper is that he's been able to battle his body and still mostly put together results. And often he's doing those two things at the very same time. Now, the tennis itself, in the final, I thought it was pretty simple what went down here. And when you have such a lopsided result, you obviously have a player who's doing multiple things better than the other player. Multiple things. But the one thing that really stood out to me is the following dynamic. I thought it was a combination of Draper having a plan to attack Rune's forehand and Rune's forehand proceeding to be vulnerable in all the ways they'd hoped it would be. So they crafted this game plan to go at this specific part of Holger's game, and it just worked beautifully because that the very thing they were targeting ended up having a very vulnerable day. Opening game, Rune misses 2 middle forehands in attack. Then he massages a forehand into the kill zone, gets attacked, Draper forcing an error with a big forehand. And this is a preview of what we'd see for the next 15 games, aka the rest of the match. Draper was going hard into the deuce side on basically every forehand he had from the middle of the court. As long as he had the time necessary to distribute the shot in that direction with some quality, he took that opportunity every time. It was almost never that Draper had a forehand from the middle the first time and he hadn't opened up the court yet and he went at Holger's backhand. Almost never. He was incredibly diligent. He knew exactly what pattern he wanted to set. And he wanted to set the pattern of Holger running into his forehand corner. Statistically, Hawkeye data, ATP, Draper hit 53% of his forehands down the line. So that includes, I think, when he takes it inside out from the middle of the court, I think they consider that down the line. But I think the more even telling stat is this. Rune hit 118 forehands in the match, and he hit 53 backhands. The whole match was being played on Holger's forehand. And the idea was, why was that Jack's plan? The idea was, if we hit a good ball into that wing, we'll get some weak stuff that we can attack. And boy, did it come true. Boy, did it ever. For most of the match, I'm pulling my hair out a little bit watching Rune's forehands cross court because they are all landing in the kill zone. What's the kill zone? It's short central. That's the terminology I like. When you hit a ball short central, it's the kill zone because you drop the ball in there and you're in trouble. Your life is in peril in that particular point, especially with the way Draper was hitting his middle forehands and his runaround forehands. He was awesome on them. His forehand, Draper's forehand, was monstrous. I don't think you can overstate exactly how good it was. And we'll get into some numbers in a moment. But going back to what was happening with Holger, the standard of Rune's ball off the forehand, his neutral ball, had to be better. It had to be a higher standard. Because the way it was batting practice for Draper's forehand. When Rune hits a forehand cross court, it needs to be fast enough, deep enough, angled enough, at least to get to Draper's backhand. If Holger's hitting forehands cross court and Jack is constantly finding runaround forehands of his own off of it, you know it wasn't a good forehand cross court, and you were seeing that over and over again. I also didn't see any counter forehands down the line by Holger to catch Jack cheating on the runaround either. you can deter a guy who's trying to skip around their backhand constantly by going hard into their forehand. And Holger didn't do much of that either. So what he was doing was he was going predictable cross or predictable central. So Draper could basically take every middle forehand at Rune's forehand and then sit on an attackable reply. And it was the same thing on Jack's backhand, which is really consistent on the cross court in its depth and its ability to remain unattackable. It's not nearly the weapon that Jack's forehand is, but he felt like he could trade his backhand with Rune's forehand. And when you're in a neutral rally, what are we looking at? We're looking at, is somebody going to miss first? Or is somebody going to hit a trade that is attackable? Otherwise, we're going to stay in neutral. And almost always in this match, I don't think Holger missed a lot from neutral, but almost always it was his trade landing too short, landing too central, and then Jack finding a ball. Therefore, Jack finding a ball to attack before Holger was able to find a ball to attack. So simply put, Rune's neutral forehands were killing him, but I don't think that was the only area where his forehand struggled. I thought defensively he struggled on it. I thought offensively he struggled on it. We talked about the 2 middle forehand attack errors in the opening game. 2-4 second set, when Jack's level at this point had dropped. So I'll just say it right now. In the first set, Draper, he was a total destroyer, an absolute animal. I just don't know. I don't know if anybody could have done anything the way he played in the first set. In the second set, I thought it was closer to his normal level. He's a great player, so his normal level is high. But I didn't think it was so extraordinary that Holger should have been blown off the court necessarily. 2-4, Rune's down a break. It's another game. He misses 2 middle forehands where he was attacking. When Draper hit up the middle, whether it was on defense or if he was literally just trying to hit a deep trade right up the middle, I thought Rune got very flat-footed on some of those balls. And his contact points were a little bit imprecise. And the delivery at times was also pretty flat and low margin compared to Jack's. Jack can hit attacking forehands with a ton of net clearance because of the RPMs he gets on the ball. Holger can get RPMs on the ball, but usually when he's really trying to do damage, the RPMs kind of go away to an extent. At least on a lot of the forehands he missed in this match from the middle of the court. He was really trying to flatten him out. I want to get to that on the Draper forehand, but just one more time to reiterate. Bad forehand day for Rune, in my view, and I truly believe the game plan coming in for Draper was to test the forehand in every way possible, and it worked unimaginably well. Another Draper key, though, was the jump he was getting off of this court. The way the ball was kicking, both on his serve and his forehand. And we've seen this in the past with Carlos Alcaraz's 2-year title reign here. That was definitely a factor in that respect. A big part of Draper's potency on the attacking forehands were how the ball was accelerating off the court. Not only was it accelerating off of his racket, and it was. Let's get to the numbers right now, actually. Draper on his forehand from the middle averaged 79 miles per hour, taking it into the ad side with 3,600 RPM. His average is 3,300 RPM, and his speed is 77 miles per hour. So 2 miles per hour faster and way spinnier. Going the other way, which is the direction he much preferred against Rune, it was way faster, off the charts fast. 84 miles per hour on his forehand from the middle into the deuce court, up from his average of 80, which was, by the way, below tour average. And RPMs on that shot as well, up from about 3,250 up to 3,500. Forehand inside in, same thing. I'll just pop it up on YouTube here. Speeds are up. Inside out, it's up 5 miles per hour. Inside in, it's up 3 miles per hour. RPMs were also up off of both sides. I just want to show on YouTube the set point for Jack, and I'll just describe it because this was unbelievable. Draper hitting a forehand inside in. Rune is super deep in the court. He knows he's having to defend, so he's given up a lot of ground here. And not only does Draper hit a fast enough ball here to stretch Rune's lateral movement, but the jump off the court makes it so that when Holger gets to the spot here, and he does get to this ball, he's hitting the ball from over his head, and he's literally 13 feet behind the baseline. That is unbelievable, folks. That is unreal. You see that on a kick serve. You don't see that on a forehand. Imagine being 13 feet behind the baseline. Somebody hits a forehand and you're hitting it over your head. That is unfair. So I can't emphasize enough, like, just how big and scary that Draper forehand was. And the second serve was basically unattackable because he was getting good kick on that shot as well. Warm conditions, high bouncing courts. Rune ends up moving way back to return second serves. And then he wasn't ripping them. He wasn't ripping them at all. So it just gave Draper tons of time. It gave him all day to get that offensive, aggressive first strike. Check this out, folks. Return speed, average return speed. Draper averaging 68 miles per hour on his first serve return. Rune 53 miles per hour. Second serve return, Draper averaging 80, which is ridiculously big on a return. Rune, even though for a lot of the match he was deep, 68 miles per hour. And it was the same issue on many of these Rune second serve returns, which I thought he got some big looks in big spots in the second set. And what did he do? He dropped him in the kill zone. Too short, too central. Draper has all day to hit his lethal forehand. What do we want to go to next here? I want to give some bigger picture context on the Jack forehand, because let's not forget that this was the part of his game that I thought was the missing piece for him to get to the top. I mean, all throughout last year, even a little bit the year before, I would get the question with Draper, how does he get to the tier 1? Like, how does he break into the top 5 and the top 10? And my answer was always the same. The forehand needs to be a bigger weapon, and everything else is there. Because he used to be a big serve, a solid baseliner, so consistent, with A- movement and fitness issues. And that's really good. Like, that's all really good. But it's not top 5 good. Especially with how important it is in the modern game that you have a big, damaging forehand weapon. It used to be very spinny always, but it just wouldn't get from point A to point B fast enough in order to be effective as an offensive tool. So to see Draper average on his forehand at the start of the second set, 83 miles per hour, to see Tennis Insights post the leaderboard for forehand quality for the entire tournament, and Draper is number 1, beating Alcaraz, beating Cerundolo, beating Feast. I mean, some of these forehands that I just have so much respect for as the biggest forehands that we see in the game on a consistent basis. Draper's up top, which I also think is important because I've given you speed and I've given you RPMs, but the reliability is a huge factor here. And that's the best part of the shot quality metric that Tennis Insights uses, and Tom Corey will point this out all the time. You've also got to make the ball to have a high quality. If you're missing all the time, you might look good on the leaderboards of spin and speed, but you're not going to score well in quality. And the fact is, Jack was hitting the monster forehands and not missing. And then there's the serve, which I have to hit on because it was tremendous. It was another huge advantage he had over Rune. Jack hit more than 50% of his first serves unreturned. Holger was around 15%. So there was an enormous gulf there in serve firepower. And had the match been closer and more competitive, I could have seen that making a difference. That said, when it's 6-2, 6-2, it's not about the serves. It's just not. It's about, like, Holger got broken too much. Rune didn't win the second serve dynamic. You know, the second serve percentages were in favor of Draper as well, which told you that Jack was dominating the baseline exchanges. So you take the first serve, you put the first serve aside, and Draper was still dominating the match. So when it's 6-2, 6-2, I don't think the first serve is necessarily the difference there, but it was incredible. And I just think Jack's first serve looks so good. The delivery is incredibly fluid. High percentage, big serves into good targets. Same toss location every time. He hits all the spots from the same toss. That is so important. And he got a ton of help from his serve in pretty slow conditions. Last thing, my biggest concern for Draper coming into the year. You'll recall in my top 10 prediction, I think I predicted him year-end 8, which is which I felt like was a good prediction in terms of optimism. Like, I wanted to say, I think Jack is going to take another leap and make the year-end championships. But my forecast for the year was that he was going to find himself in a lot of big matches, and he might struggle in some of these big matches because he struggles with the nerves. And a couple things. One, perhaps we saw that in this tournament a little bit. He did have some trouble with finish lines. But hey, winning 6-2, 6-2 is a really good way to take that out of the equation. It's an excellent way to just shove that issue aside. And I also thought it was really encouraging to hear Draper on the Tennis Channel desk after the match say, I feel more calm now in these big matches, and admit that was not the case last year. That I would feel so much tension in my body, I would be overwhelmed. And it's like, yeah, as great a player as you are, it looked that way. It looked like the nerves would sometimes basically suffocate him. And that will, it doesn't always go away with experience, but it sometimes does. And it seems for Jack, that particular issue is slowly but surely ironing itself out. Another thing everybody has always said about Jack, including Jack himself, is that the tennis has never been the issue. Will the mind hold up? Will the body hold up? And for me, Draper is maturing physically, maturing mentally. And that's the biggest piece to the puzzle right there. A couple of words on the semis. Let me just start with Draper Alcaraz. And to be clear, it's been obviously a busy weekend with me in Phoenix. Didn't get to watch these semifinals. I'm going to go back and catch up on them. But how about the Alcaraz quote? Let me throw this out there. I quote Carlos Alcaraz after the semifinal. I always say that I have to be focused on myself, on my own game. I think today I was more worried about his level, his game, than myself. So when you're thinking more about the opponent than yourself, then it is a big problem. So that's what happened today. Since the beginning of the day, since the morning, I was thinking about his game because he's really tough. He's really solid, and it's going to be a really physical match. I didn't approach the match in the best way that I could, so I was nervous during the whole day, in the practice even before the match. Oh my goodness. I mean, does that quote not tell you a lot about how much Alcaraz respects Draper? It reads as if Alcaraz was a little bit intimidated by Draper, which is, I don't want that to be taken the wrong way, because Carlos can beat anybody, shouldn't be intimidated by anybody. But there was fear factor. There was fear factor, and he said it. He's admitting it. And I'm not bashing Carlos. I'm saying you should read that and say, wow, well done, Jack Draper. You have played Carlos well enough, and you have shown good enough tennis where Alcaraz is nervous throughout the day because of what you bring to the table. Whoa. That caught my eye. All right, the other thing. Medvedev Rune. And again, we're in this The most unfortunate part about Monday Match Analysis sometimes is that somebody can have a great run all week, but I analyzed the final. In this case, it went 6-2, 6-2 against Holger, and then it turns out being, somewhat negative on his side because we're focusing on the final. Obviously, huge week from Rune and a massive test passed against Medvedev in the semifinal, where from everything I've gathered, he played with a lot of structure, thoughtfulness, tactics, discipline, patience, point construction, all of this stuff that we want to see from Holger Rune and haven't always seen from him. Well, first of all, the biggest thing where I'm very encouraged with Rune, the biggest area that has me feeling good about that display is that he had the fitness and the legs to execute the disciplined style against Medvedev, because it all starts there. And sometimes it's at least looked like Rune either doesn't have the confidence in his fitness or doesn't have the fitness on a baseline level to be able to say, okay, I'll go to war with you from the back of the court and play really consistent. It hasn't always looked like that. But certainly he was able to do that against Medvedev. And I wonder if he has increased his commitment to the fitness side of things. I'm not sure. But to me, his legs look bigger. And to me, he hung in rallies against Daniil in a way that I don't think he had since the clay court season in 2023. The other part of this is there's this Medvedev dynamic that is very, very real. Players play better against Medvedev. Players play better tennis against Daniil Medvedev because they don't feel super threatened. So the patience and the consistency goes up. Everything I'm talking about with Rune putting way too many forehand trades in the kill zone. Against Medvedev, he will let you get away with some of that. He is not so big off the ground that when you drop a ball short central, he terminates the rally every time. Oftentimes, you can find a way back. So patience and consistency often goes up against Medvedev. Meanwhile, variety goes up. And the varied attack tends to go up because everybody has so much respect for Medvedev's defense and his consistency. So guys are inspired to hit the backhand slice more. Guys are inspired to mix in the serve and volley. They are inspired to play some high balls, to push Medvedev back, to create some better attacking opportunities. They know they can't blast through him because his defense is so good. So part of it is a respect for Medvedev, but it's also this really deep understanding of Medvedev's strengths and weaknesses. And I find time and time again, especially this year and last year, where folks are playing Daniil so well because they respect him enough to really focus on dialing in a perfect game plan against him. So Rune did all that stuff perfectly. But that is increasingly the case against Daniil Medvedev, and it is making life very difficult for the former U.S. Open champion. All right, everybody, let's move on to Phoenix. The Phoenix Challenger Notebook Dump. Let's start with the final. Fonseca over Bublik in a couple of tiebreaks. It was a fascinating final, especially because very textured performance from Bublik. I don't know how else to put it. There were some things he did at an elite level. There were other things he did at a very poor level. And it was all about the balance between those two. And the way I look at it, let's start with the things Bublik did great. Net play was amazing. He was forcing his way in, finding himself with tough volleys often, and usually just finishing them or eventually getting to a finish off of them. First serve was unplayable pretty consistently throughout the week. Corentin Moutet kind of neutralized it and made Bublik play a lot from the back of the court, but nobody else was able to really neutralize it. So amazing net play, amazing first serve potency, and great disruption of rhythm. I mean, Bublik went up against Fonseca and essentially refused to trade ground strokes from the back of the court. He was like, nope, we're not going to do this. We're just not. And that's probably smart. It's probably smart to not engage in baseline trading with Fonseca if you're Alexander Bublik, because you're just not going to win that battle. So it was constant disruption with quick drop shots, weird kind of short chips, serve and volleys, fast net approaches, sometimes some ball basherism off the ground, especially in the first set, especially early in the match. Bublik kind of got away from that at a certain point. But then there were some other areas where Bublik was incredibly vulnerable. The biggest thing is he lost all confidence in his forehand drive, including on the return. I mean, he basically stopped hitting over his forehand in this match. And that is just a big chink in the armor when you completely... It's not that I think it should have been a big part of what Bublik was doing out there, but it became as if he was afraid to hit a forehand. And this was true on the return of serve as well. Bublik's backhand return was actually excellent in this match. I actually could have added that to the things he did great. Fonseca eventually figured out, okay, if I find the forehand return, I'm getting a chip. Sometimes a good enough chip, sometimes a bad chip, but I'm definitely getting a chip. I'm definitely going to get to start the point and set the pattern on my own terms, no matter what. Second serve of Bublik, another vulnerability. It was an issue all week, except for one match. Against Borges, it was pretty good. Other than that, it was a vulnerability all week. And then the drop shots were forced sometimes. There were some drop shots from positions where it just wasn't available. That is expected when you're as desperate as Bublik was to hit it. I think the biggest dynamic that ended up deciding the match, though, was because Bublik did not want to play from the baseline, did not want to hit second serves. We ended up getting a lot of serve and volleys off of safer first serves, and Fonseca came up with the returns at Bublik's feet when it mattered. There were some frustrating moments where Fonseca had trouble passing Bublik throughout the second set, but when it mattered, the returns were there, the passing shots were there. Bublik, hitting a safe first serve and coming in behind it wasn't going to get it done, and it did not. For Fonseca, the frustration tolerance was incredible. We talked about it in the interview, but he served for the first set twice, in case that wasn't clear. Joao did say that, but he served for the first set twice. He got broken both times. Then he played a good tiebreak, just like the Buenos Aires second set final. Second set in the final. Then in the second set, 7 break points, chances across 3 or 4 different games, never broke. So just the fact that he stuck with it, that he kept his head, was unbelievably impressive. It also was, in fairness, probably the most frustrated I've ever seen him on the court at certain points. Ultimately, though, he kept it together admirably. His continental play on drop shot retrievals were really good. Bublik forces so many drop shots, he's often not going to hit it for a winner, but you have to be very diligent about what you do when you get there, because he's great with the target. He passes well off of both wings. I actually think that's when his drive forehand performs best, is when he's hitting passing shots. So Joao was really good mixing it up, sometimes deep down the line, sometimes chipping deep down the line, sometimes short angle cross, sometimes redrop, keeping the ball in front of him. Really good stuff with the continental. And then again, the returns from Fonseca were really good when Bublik gave him a chance. He struggled to pass on the fourth shot for a while. So fourth shot is return +1. That's your fourth shot. He struggled on that fourth shot sometimes, but eventually he made some. Fonseca, big picture for the week. I didn't think his ball striking was there until the Nishikori match. But there are other things that he has to his game, which is so crucial. Against Kotov, he wasn't maxing out his ground stroke speeds. He played very in control. I think coming off of the Draper loss, he was like, I got to play with more margin. I can't miss that much. He hinted at that in our interview. So I'm pretty confident that was sort of swirling through his mind at that point. So everything was sort of, even the attacks were kind of 90% pace, just hit Kotov off balance and come in. And his volley finishing was amazing in that match. Against Struff, really tricky outing there in a lot of ways. I thought the backhand slice was massive for him. He figured out that Struff really didn't like going down low to get the ball. And there was also lots of timely serving against Struff. Against Nishikori, this is where I thought he found his level. He didn't need to kind of figure out something, externally in his game. He could kind of rely on what he does best against Nishikori. But the thing that definitely stood out was his second serving. Because I watched Nishikori all week and there was one common theme. Kei Nishikori was obliterating everybody's second serves. He's not a flamethrower, Kei, but he's taking it so early and just lasering it at your feet. He was doing this to everybody. Sometimes lasering it down the line, especially on the ad side. Kick wide to Nishikori's backhand, and he's hitting backhand returns down the line like nobody's business. Fonseca was the first guy who played Nishikori who could hit the second serve big enough and heavy enough for Kei to not completely smother it. And then we've already hit on the final. So that's kind of my big picture overview of Joao. Bublik racket was a storyline. This was a huge week for him after slipping to 82 in the rankings. It had been since Wimbledon, since Sasha Bublik had won back-to-back matches, which is pretty crazy. So he's been a guy who switches rackets quite a bit throughout his career, and he does it again. He bought some pure arrows. He or someone on his team spray painted them black. They did a pretty sloppy job, so it was pretty easy to see that they were pure arrows. Like there was even yellow kind of sticking out a little bit. But a couple of things looked kind of back for Bublik. One, the first serve finally started dominating the way he needs it to. And again, that's simply how he needs to win. But until the final, he was way more comfortable playing aggressive off the ground with his drives. And, bad Bublik, non-confident Bublik, tends to get caught in this rut where he's either trying to force the issue and his forehand is extremely erratic, or he's kind of playing patty cake with the ball a little bit, which can work sometimes, but his movement isn't that good that he can get away with being a soft hitter. So I thought he was much better just hitting aggressively from the back of the court. Babolat, the pure arrow, it's got that open 16 by 20 string pattern. It's got the aerodynamic head frame. Maybe it just suits his vertical swing path a little bit more. He felt like he could use the topspin to bring the ball down and to control the ball. That's at least what it seemed like for Bublik, but also smart for him to just change it up. Nishikori, I want to add one thing. I'm just going to go through players here. I mentioned that his return was suffocating everybody, but one of the things I really take away from it is how he's always moving his weight forward through the return. One of the things that I think that is so technically sound about Nishikori is his body weight transfer through the return, first serve and second serve every single time. Great thing to watch out for with Kei. Players who I am higher on, well, let me end with that. The other guy I want to hit on is Cobolli. He didn't have an off season, so he deserves some grace, but it's been a real struggle in 2025. And to me, there's one part of his game that is anchoring him down, completely stunting his progress, and that's his serve. And he has a lively arm and some decent technique. His first serve, it has enough on it, but it has zero accuracy, relatively speaking. It is a total wild cannon. He makes low percentage, And he's not making a low percentage because he's going for the lines. He just doesn't have command over where that first serve is going. The kick serve is pretty good, but on hard court and on grass, it's not going to protect him. It's not going to bail him out. Certainly Nishikori didn't have any issues attacking his kick serve. And for Cobolli, I just think that that is the issue right now. There might be some other things. Like maybe the discipline can hurt him sometimes. Maybe the shot selection can make him inconsistent. But at the end of the day, he needs to develop a flat serve and a slice serve that he can hit spots with and be accurate on. Two players who I am higher on than before. They actually played against each other. Rinky Hijikata, the definition of an all-skill player. I cannot say enough about how well-rounded his game is. Every single direction off of either wing, backhand slice, volley, drop shot, and then even the more muscular stuff that you think like Rinky's bad with, like the first serve and the forehand. Nah, I mean, maybe compared to the top guns, he lacks in those categories, but honestly, he's getting a lot out of his frame. He's not a big guy. He's getting a lot out of his frame. So, I just have a ton of respect for how he's built his game. That's all I can say. And Brendon Holt doesn't hit that hard or move that fast, but boy, is he consistent, fit, plays great depth, redirects well. He's going to be a guy who people might be a little bit confused at when he starts putting together results. And people are going to look at him and be like, why is this guy winning? I'm telling you, it is how he limits the errors. It is his rally tolerance and his discipline in long rallies. It is his depth and his redirections. All of those things are at an extremely high level. All right, that is all I got, folks. This was a fun episode, huh? Miami preview coming up tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.